Yes, we do. Hey, Zoomers. Thanks for joining us. We'll start in like 3 minutes. Zoomers is such a weird word.
Zoomers.
I don't feel like that's not going to pick up. Is it?
Hey, Zoomers.
Like I want to slap myself.
Sounds like something from a Nickelodeon show.
Hey,
Zoomers.
Hey, Zoomers.
Hey, Zoomers.
Are you ready to have
Are you ready to have
fun? Oh, Lord. Okay. So this is the.
Okay, this is this.
Yeah. And yeah, make it your own.
Yeah.
You adjust the angle. This little.
Right there?
Yeah, well, this guy, he moves, or she moves.
They move.
They move. So yeah, you can,
Okay.
and then to lock it, you just twist it right,
Twist, okay.
right there. And there will probably be some questions on Zoom.
Gotcha.
I expect most people will just.
Do I get to say action? No? Do I get to say action? Like, action? No. Right? Here we go. People automatically come in. You don't have to admit them, right? It just pops up.
You might have to do that.
Okay. Okay. It's all right. More resume builder. Problem solved. Yep. 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 From major events at Lehman from 2022 to 2023. Events coordinator. Oh, Antoine here, Weatherington, graduating next month.
Antoinette, and I had to present you as my presentation. But I actually really love your book. I really, really love your book, and you are my friend in my head. You just don't know it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I see your whole summer. We're happening right now.
real idea what the book is about, which is why I even wrote up to that.
Love that. You weren't there for tonight's presentation?
I was there, but it's like,
We really were, like tunnel vision. Nothing else mattered that day. But it was a good presentation though. It was good. It was good.
Paulo, why are you taking photos of us? I mean, I did Is this for art class or?
No, I'm not taking photos. I was gonna take photos around campus later.
Okay.
Oh, that's nice.
What do you do want to take photos of?
You ever release swarms on you? Okay.
I don't need one.
You want to put that?
I'm doing minor in Euro, like trying to get it out. Mostly for reference work.
Okay.
Where does it say hi to Edgar?
Oh, yeah, we have to. Hi.
Y'all will have to.
And bow.
I want to.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Hi, Edgar. My name is Edgar, and I am here today because I'm curious to know what your story is about. I love to hear personal stories.
Hello, I'm Imani.
Sure.
I'm Layla. I did a few. Yeah. Yeah, half of my stuff.
And delivered.
I would have been mad if I were to. Yeah.
No, that's true.
We're struggling college students, so that is definitely part of it.
When I get to see you plus pizza, yeah, I was
You plus pizza. It should be a t-shirt. You plus pizza.
I mean, I can eat too at some point. I think Celine is on her way.
Yeah.
Traffic.
We have like a couple of really cute kids that sometimes come in, and I want you to, because they're bad.
Let me ask her.
Yeah, I think she's on her way. But we can get started.
Okay.
So Edgar needs no introduction. We've all, or most of us have read his work already.
Mhm.
But I thought we'll read 10 to 15 minutes. And we just have a Q&A. I'll ask a question. The Zoomers, forgive me. People on Zoom will ask a question. And then the audience. Is Xavier here?
No. Aw.
Where is he? Go get him. Right, does he, right, did you tell him? Just put him on Zoom. Yes.
Is it better if Edgar reads up here? Like what looks better on Zoom?
The chair, the Oprah style. Yeah.
The chair.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just make sure it's recording correctly. Okay, so I learned this the hard way. Apparently you like pin it
Oh,
and then it's a lot clearer.
oh, much better.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much.
You give me artistic license to move about if I need.
The bullet points. Thanks so much for being here. Take it away. You don't introduce yourself. Okay, yeah, just go ahead and start. Hi, everybody, thanks for coming.
Hi. Hi.
I did this a reading here 2 years ago, but it's virtual, and so like it wasn't the same. So to be here in person was pretty cool, and also to see this campus. Like,
Oh, this is your first time seeing this campus?
yeah, I live in Jackson Heights, Queens, so
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm always in Queens, by the way.
Oh,
You're
Well, I hang out in Queens, like I go to, hang out. No.
all right. Let's So I'm gonna read a little bit from the book. This is from the chapter called Mama's Boy, it's chapter 3, and the chapter is about
about the year when I came out to my mom, and she didn't super take it like really well, but eventually she did. But this year she kind of checked out. I was 17 years old, and like randomly I became friends with this drag queen named Miguel / Princess, and she sort of like was sort of like a stand-in for my mom that year. And she showed me a bunch of things that my mom wouldn't have been able to as like a straight woman. And so in this scene, I'm meeting Miguel / Princess for the first time, and she's taking me to a gay bar called Parliament House. And yeah, what you need to know, I'm 17. At school, I was kind of like an outcast, feeling like weird, because there was a rumor going around that like if you knew me, I would like turn you gay, which I wish was true.
Right? Okay, that magical power.
And what else? Oh, and then I briefly mentioned guava wine. It's because my stepdad who used to drink, stopped drinking, like poured every bottle down the drain. But we kept a bottle of guava wine around the house. So yeah, that's like 17. It was Gay Pride weekend, so that Saturday I rode the city bus to the parade with a flask of guava wine, the only alcohol we had left at home, shoved into my underwear. It wasn't my first Gay Pride, but it was my first one alone. I wondered if the other people seated around me on the bus had any idea where I was going with my little denim shorts and tank top. Once there, I followed the sound of upbeat music to a street overflowing with gay people. I found a spot among them and watched the trans elders marching with their fists in the air, the go-go boys hurling condoms from the tops of floats, the dykes on bikes pressing on the horns of their motorcycles, leaving in their wake a road littered with weed and confetti. I tried to match everyone's energy, but it felt awkward to smile and scream by myself, like I was crashing a party and they all knew. I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to be proud of. The closest thing was this. The year before, I came out to my mom. We'd been at the Clinique counter inside Saxon Avenue, waiting to ask an employee about a coupon we got in the mail. There was no good reason for me to do it then, like there hadn't been one when I told my ex-boyfriend. I suppose I just wanted to get it over. And my gut told me she wouldn't make a scene around so many rich white people. I have to tell you something, I said, laying it out as gently as if I were dropping the words into hot oil. I think I like boys. I think I'm gay. Okay, Mom said, and then she put on her sunglasses, I guess to cry. I was getting ready for her to grab my arm and pull me out of the store when a sales girl came up to us and offered her some free samples. Mom smiled and acted as if nothing had just happened. Maybe I should have thought it was strange how quickly the moment passed, and a part of me did, but mostly I was focused on the fact that seconds later, she moved on and was buying me a 3-month supply of face wash. That's it, I thought. It was such a nice idea that I let myself believe it. She really doesn't care. It wasn't until we made it back home and I heard her sobbing on the phone with an aunt that I understood how badly I hurt her. I expected my aunt would talk some sense into her, and when she finished the call, she'd come into my room and kick me out or whoop me, but she didn't. She didn't do a thing. I was so grateful, I got it in my head that I could repay her for her acceptance by proving that my being gay didn't mean I was going to change. If she waited a little, I'd show her I was practically still straight. Within a week, I hung up a Miami Dolphins football calendar in my room, threw out all my rom-coms, packed my flamboyant clothes into a suitcase and hid it under my bed. In retrospect, this must have only confused her. It confused me. After all, what was the point of coming out if I was just going to the closet? Standing on the side of the street at Pride, surrounded by queers who seemed way more fearless than I could ever be, I felt like a poser. I ducked inside a porta potty and swallowed a flask of guava wine in one gulp, gagging at the toilet stench flooding my nostrils. The graffiti-tagged walls were slimy with humidity, the space cramped and dark, but I was more comfortable in there than outside. It was easier to breathe with no one watching. When someone knocked on the door, I summoned the nerve to open it by promising myself I could leave in an hour. There was a strip of sidewalk nearby where businesses had set up booths selling rainbow sunglasses and giving. I made my way over and tried looking available by standing near groups of strangers and laughing. Some of them, mainly older men wearing Western shirts tucked into Wranglers, played along. Pride is so corporate now, they said, and Smile. What do you have to be sad about? When I was your age, whew, I accepted greedily their attention, the vodka cranberries and tequila sunrises they offered. They moved me in closer, rubbed my chest through my clothes, squeezed my ass. Where do you live? They pulled me between their legs, slobbered on my neck. How old are you? With my mom, I answered, wiping their spit off my skin. Almost 18. By nightfall, I lost my flask and was holding onto someone's sticky hand. I didn't know who they were or how we pushed past thousands of bodies to the front of the free Lisa concert. The man gradually came into focus as I sobered up. He was short and bald, with chubby pop-art cheeks that looked like the gum center of a blow trumpet. Maybe I was still drunk, I thought, because as much as I blinked, his eyebrows never appeared. In the hand up holding mine, he carried a plastic cup. He must have been old enough to buy himself alcohol, though his outfit, an oversized Lady Gaga t-shirt and leggings, made me think he couldn't have been over 23. He waved his drink in the air to Lisa. We were apparently talking. So this is gonna be a long monologue. Can't just get in a car with anyone, he was saying. Este lugar está lleno de locos. Bitch, you have nice skin. Do you get that a lot? What is that? NC 40, 42? No, they're foundation shades. Mac, I'm a makeup artist. Oh girl, no, don't use drugstore. That shit'll make you break out. I can get you a discount. I'll look it up. Can I tell you a secret? I don't know this song. Don't laugh. I don't know this lady. To you? Stop laughing. Who is this? Yeah, totally mom music. Want to go to Parliament House? I'm over her. She's cute, but this song is killing my vibe. I want Whitney. Stop. She is not mom music. Come on, let's go. I can get you in for free. Parliament House was packed shoulder to shoulder with the wet off from Pride. The man who introduced himself as Miguel on the ride over, and I burrowed our way through the dance floor to the massive outdoor courtyard, where hundreds of shirtless dudes who had the same idea as us shook their asses to the techno music pouring out of the club. String lights suspended from palm trees crisscrossed the dark purple sky, waving in the breeze. In my tipsy haze, they looked like lightning bugs. I was in love. Damn, I forgot this place sucks, Miguel said. No one else seemed to think so. Everywhere people were kissing and grinding up against each other or taking selfies with a 7-foot tall drag queen dripping with rainbow beads. Miguel noticed me overly. You know, all the queens here have AIDS, he said, reading my face for a reaction. I shoved my hands into my jeans and crushed a deep horn into the ground. He seemed satisfied with that, like he told this story before and it was one of the acceptable responses. They walked around poking people with needles, he went on. What the fuck? I asked, searching the queen's hands for something sharp and reflective, but also careful not to appear too nervous. I didn't want him to take me home yet. Why would they do that? He shrugged. Why does anyone do anything? Want to play bingo? Like now? I asked. He grabbed my elbow and pushed us out of the crowd, leading me to a fluorescent lit 2-story building that wrapped around the entire edge of the courtyard. It was punctuated with navy blue doors, most of them closed. Between each one was a floor-to-ceiling window that revealed the motel room inside like a museum. Parliament House building. I might have been surprised that a gay club would have its own motel, but in Orlando, everything is theme park size. Oh, and this is in Florida. In less than an hour, I counted 3 dance floors, past a full-service restaurant, a porn shop, another store that sold antiques, and was invited to a boat party on the private beach. We climbed the stairs to the second-floor motel balcony. Leaning against the waist-high railing, I watched the tightly packed bodies gyrating below. The space where Miguel and I had been standing just a second ago had been immediately filled by 2 new men wearing neon short shorts. One stretched his tongue out of his mouth like he was catching snowflakes, and the other was a tiny white square on the tip. They threw their arms around each other, then laughed at the vast endless sky, as if there were funny memories playing up there that only they could see. I suspected that if they walked away, 2 more men would descend from above to replace them, like pigeons hanging out on the telephone line. It was bizarre, looking down at everyone, to think that at school I was such a freak, when here, the only thing remarkable about me was that I wasn't on Molly or stabbing people. There was something to be proud of.
And we're not stabbing people with it.
That's a great time.
I know, and there's been so many stories of stabbing lately. I'm just like,
And then Florida, I mean, they're kind of.
Yeah, but you know, New York, I feel like is matching chaotic. Florida and New York.
They take turns on the news. Either it's New York or Florida. They take turns.
We all have good reflexes here. So, in hearing your reading, something that struck me is I don't think you wrote this with a universal audience in mind, but there is this sense of courage that you uncover through these exploits. And I can see why you would tap into this like universal urge that we all have, be our straight or whatever, to be our true selves. And so that's more of a comment, but the courage aspect of, you know, and hearing you read. And my question is, since this was published, when was publication date?
January 11th.
January 11th, has the meaning of this work changed to you? Do you feel like hearing people's reaction, do you realize, oh, there's more to this than I didn't know was present when I wrote it?
I think that happens a lot, especially like creative writing workshops when you turn in a story and you think it's about one thing and then everybody be like, wow, it's so cool that you like, this is about this and this and this. And you'll be like, oh, okay, it's about that, okay, cool. And I've gotten a lot of that where like, I feel like people have, a lot of reviewers have been like, wow, like your examination of like, I don't know, like race and class and like that and all this. And it's like interesting or whatever. And for me, it was like, I didn't feel like I was like explicitly doing that. I was kind of just telling my own story. And so it is cool to see other people's interpretation.
And in published form, I feel like that's different. You talk about this in the chapter later on. Mostly, Edgar went to a really fancy writing program in California.
I don't know if it was
I
fancy.
think it's fancy. You see Riverside.
Have any of you heard of the school?
No.
Like that part.
It sounds fancy, Riverside.
I mean, it's just, part of people were kind of disillusioned by it to some extent. But for writers to do, especially for writers of color, to go into a writing program, you're going to experience some feedback that you experienced that didn't really add to your story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. So I went to UC Riverside, which is one of the UCs, because it was fully funded. So they like paid for your students to go there. I mean, in theory, you have to work while you're there, and that is really what's paid for it. So they try to be slick and say fully funded, but you work for it. But yeah, I got some feedback that wasn't super valuable, and I got some feedback that was valuable. The thing is, like, you get thrown into a room with like strangers, and they're not all gonna be your audience, and they all have like equal weight in the workshop room to give you feedback. And the other thing about, I don't know if you've been in creative writing workshops, but a lot of them have this thing called a gag rule, where you're not allowed to speak. So you basically just, you turn in something super vulnerable, and then you walk in and everybody reads it and like has all these thoughts. And you go in and you sit down and they just talk about whatever you wrote and you're not allowed to respond to it. And it's supposed to mimic the real world experience. Like if I write this, for example, this book, and like one of y'all goes to a bookstore and picks it up and you have some questions about it, I'm like not gonna be there sitting next to you to answer your questions. And so like in theory, it's supposed to be that. There's also like a long history that's like done. When I do creative writing workshop, I don't do the gag. But yeah, I got, for example, the first chapter is set in Nicaragua. I'm half Nicaraguan, half Puerto Rican. And one person in the workshop said something like, you should write more about McDonald's in Nicaragua because I want to know like what interesting foods they sell in Nicaraguan McDonald's so that I can get like a sense of the culture. And I was like, and I just had to sit there and be like, okay. And the chapter is literally, it's about like a cockfighting ring. It's about a night where I was like locked in a bedroom with a woman who was paid to take my virginity. And they said, the girl, and they said they wanted more McDonald's. And so I was like, what is going on here? But luckily, the workshop instructor was cool and like shut it down pretty quickly. I was like, don't pay attention to that. But there were times that like I would get feedback that, you know, maybe the workshop instructor didn't shut it down, or they would also, your peers would give you letters, and there'd be things in the letters that I would read at home and be like, wow, this is dumb. I wish you brought it up in the workshop so somebody could have like said something about how dumb this was. But yeah, in general, yeah, you do get a lot of weird stuff, and you kind of just have to learn who your audience is. I guess it's like it helps narrow down like who am I gonna listen to? Whose work did I like, and do I feel like they might be able to provide valuable feedback? And even sometimes you might not like somebody's writing, and they can still give you valuable feedback. But yeah, it definitely took some time. At first, I like changed my voice. I changed the kind of stories I was writing when I first started my MFA, because I thought, oh, I have to be universal. I have to be universal. And then I think gradually I just stopped caring about that. And I realized that like
It's cold, like a universal, it's something hidden in that, like, I need you to appeal to everyone, you know.
and
Yes.
universal is a word that has been historically used to mean white people,
Mhm,
straight white people.
mhm.
And when they say, oh, this, you should try to make this more universal, what they're trying to say is take out the Spanish, translate the Spanish, take out the slang, take out everything that makes the story you, right? And you just really do have to unlearn that. And it's a risk too.
I love the fact that you decided to use your voice and not everybody else's, because you can't please people. And if you start writing in somebody, in what everybody else is saying, then you're going to lose yourself, right?
Yeah.
So then it won't be your story. But I have a question. So I was listening towards the end of your reading, and I was kind of getting this from you, that through writing that book, it kind of helped you to become braver, gain your self-confidence, getting out, showing who you are, and not living a lie, but just living for yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's weird, but like, I mean, I wrote this book, it took me like 7 years or something. And while writing it, I did become, I think, a bolder person. I mean, first of all, there's just the idea that I was like, I'm writing this, and then it's weird, but I'm like, I know I'm a memoirist, but I'm like kind of a private person. And my family's very private, and we're very not like, we're not like, let's put all our business out there, right? Which is exactly what I did. And like that, I had to like build the courage to just do that.
Yeah.
But there's even like one super specific example. I think it's chapter 4 or 5. It's about me going to a gay bathhouse. And when I first started taking creative writing classes, specifically nonfiction classes, you like go into this room and they're like, all right, in 2 weeks, turn in a story. And it has to be a personal story. And I remember I wrote this when I was like 21 or 22 years old. And I really wanted to go to this gay bathhouse at the time, but I was really scared to, because there was like a lot of shame and stigma associated with like the kind of gay person that goes to a gay bathhouse. And so I kind of was like, all right, what if I have to turn in a personal story? I use like writing about going to the gay bathhouse as an excuse to actually go. And so like in a weird way, in like writing this book pushed me to do things out of my comfort zone. And then I turned that story into class, and I was still scared as hell, because I was like, I'm turning this again to a room full of strangers, and they're all gonna like know that I went to a gay bathhouse. Yeah, it was really scary, but luckily that was a cool workshop, and everybody was like supportive. But yeah.
I don't know what a gay bathhouse is. What is a gay bathhouse?
So it is like what a Turkish bathhouse is? It's like a building where there's like, it's like a spa, except people have sex.
Okay.
Great, that was a great example. Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Spa with sex, sex spa.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't try to make my book universal. I listed some examples of ways how, like I kept my Spanish, kept my slang, I kept my references to things that some people might not know. I mean, I think the first like the second paragraph of the book has like references to like Mexican novela stars. Nicaragua, like this is a place that like the publishing industry wants stories like set in Mexico, Puerto Rico. There's like a couple of like
Vacation destinations.
Yeah. When it comes to Central America, they want stories of suffering, if they want stories about Nicaragua at all.
Mhm.
I mean, can y'all think of any other Nicaraguan books? Right? Probably not. I can barely think of, and I'm Nicaraguan. And so when it comes to risk, one of the biggest risks is, was I even going to be able to sell this book? Because ultimately publishing is a business and they're trying to make money. And in their minds, they're thinking, what is quote unquote universal? What am I going to be able to sell to the most amount of people? And though there is evidence that free people, that people of color, that people of different marginalized identities do buy books, a lot of the people in positions of power in the publishing industry are old white men. And they're used to the old ways and they're invested in the old ways and they don't want those ways threatened. And so they basically just buy the same books. And so that was a big risk for me. I was like, I wrote this book, I told it as authentically as was possible for me at the time, and maybe it won't sell. And the reality is that when this book went out on submission, meaning that my agent went and pitched it to a bunch of editors at publishing houses, and editors are the ones that buy the books at the publishing houses, it did get turned down a lot by a lot of people. And this book got published by independent press, Possible Press, which is one of the bigger independent presses, but it isn't one of the like top 5 publishing houses, which are like Penguin Random House. I don't even know the rest. And I mean, I think some of the success of my book just goes to show how wrong the publishing industry can be. Because a lot of people turn it down. Meanwhile, this book got reviewed in the New York Times. It's been in a bunch of different publications. I don't know what the numbers are of how it's selling, because I'm scared to look that up in the house. But on the surface, it seems to be doing well, at least better than like expectations. But yeah, it was a risk to buy high-risk homosexual. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you feel, or do you think that you get a purpose when you write that book? So do you think that people feel justified with your history, and how you feel when somebody read it, like our friend that she read it and she feels excited, identified, feel the part of your books, like.
I mean, I feel like whatever reaction people have to my book, as long as it's positive, I get excited about it. I'm like not trying to make people mad. I'm not trying to stir the pot. I feel like my book does do that, but I'm very like drama free. My goal is to like move back to Puerto Rico and like find my business. But I'll just satisfy it for a second. But yeah, I mean, I get really happy no matter what the response is. Even if people are just like, the book made me laugh, like that makes me happy. If people are like, I saw myself in the book, that makes me happy. If people are like, this taught me something about femininity, about gender, about quote unquote Latinidad, that makes me happy. So yeah, I get super, super excited. It's like, it feels like I made a cake and people liked it. So I'm like, yeah. And because I spent freaking 7 years writing it. And people were just like, whatever, I feel like, why did I waste all this time?
7-year pregnancy.
Yeah.
As long as you manage to change the life of a couple of people, that makes a difference.
Yeah, that's truly how I feel.
Okay, so when my professor gave us this book or whatever, well, we had to choose the books, right? What we wanted to present on. And we were like, wow, we gotta go with high risk. I was saying, yeah, we were both, we was like, let's go with high risk. I feel like it's gonna be really good. So, at first, in school, you're like, damn, an assignment, whatever, right? But the book actually ended up being really good. Like, I was really getting into it. Like, I was home and I couldn't put it down. So I was like, oh, this when you were in school and stuff like that, and you felt like an outcast and stuff like that, like I really wanted to like go in the book, go back in time, and to really like be your friend, like knock on your door, like, hey girl, like, hey girl, I'm your friend, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's hang out, like, I'll be your friend. You know, you can be as free as you want with me, like, no, I can be secrets, like, you know. So that's how I felt with you, like, and I felt your book, like, you were vulnerable, and you strike me as like you're shy, but for someone to be so shy to put out a book like this is really brave to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary. I appreciate what you just said too, by the way. And honestly, in high school, it was girls that like really backed me up. My friendships with girls, and so yeah, I feel like I don't know you, but I had some youths
Right, right.
that stood up for me, so that was really cool. Yeah, I think while writing this book, I got less shy, like makes you get less shy. I mean, a lot of it was written in like workshops where, like I said, you have to go in and like tell everybody the business, which is like the opposite of like your instinct as a shy person. But it's mostly like I'm a double Pisces. Really? Okay.
Oh, brother.
And I'm very like people's energies really affect me. And so I try not to like expose myself. I mean, I even got my ego out of here. People's energies really like affect me. And so yeah, it makes me nervous a little bit. Because anytime I'm like, oh my God, right now there's somebody out there reading my book, thinking about me and having feelings about me, and they could be mad at me.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I'm always like, no, back up.
I feel like that too, but in other ways, like I feel like I'm scared to put certain things out there, like first, like on social media, like when it comes to my business, I'm very personal too. People think they know me, but they do not know that. Because I keep my personal, like very personal, because energy. Like I really do go off of people's energy. If I get a bad vibe, I stay with you, you know, because that does affect me too. So I definitely get where you're coming from with that. But I wanted to ask you, like, are you and your mother like cool now? So
Yeah, we're in a much better place. It's still like a process. It's like a long journey. I think one of the things that I wanted to write about in this book is how relationships, especially for queer people, are like a long journey. It isn't ever just like there aren't like magical scenes where like, I came out and then she was mad and then things got better overnight. It was like a process. But a lot of times in things like movies where like they have 2 hours to tell a story, they have to like reduce things, complicated things. And then also in books, it's like a different story, but a lot of times there used to be pressure to only write stories about suffering. And I feel like now there's pressure to write stories about joy, like only joy, and like real life is a mix of both things. It's like there's highs and there's lows.
yeah.
And so that's the same with my mom. There were highs and lows. And right now it's like in a really good place. Like she just met my boyfriend. We went to a show on Broadway. And I had a yeah, so we're in a much better place. But yeah, we're still at work on it,
Okay, and what about your uncles?
Oh, uncles.
I feel like it's a little bit different. I think okay, so when I said earlier that it's always been women that have backed me up, I feel like there are probably a lot of behind the scenes conversations that my mom and my aunt have to have with my uncle. To kind of like check them a little bit.
Yeah.
And also I'm older now. And the great thing about being older is that like if they don't accept me or if they don't like treat me the way I want to be treated and the way that I demand to be treated, I don't have to be around them.
That's right.
And also a lot of them are Miami and Nicaragua. So I when would I see them?
Exactly.
So like it would actually be effort to go and help see them, and I'm only gonna like put out that effort if it's like if it's positive.
Right.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's also an ongoing process. But when my mom was my boyfriend and also came with her, and he was a little weird at first. I think he just wasn't used to it, which is valid.
Your uncle,
One of my uncles,
okay.
but not one of the uncles in the story. I have so many uncles.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it was one of them in the story.
The uncles in the story, one of them is cool. He sends me like memes every day on WhatsApp. But I don't know, that's like a very Latinx thing where they send me like a cup of coffee meme and it says like buenos dias. And that's like every single day.
That's nice.
So I think that's
It's
good.
their way,
Yeah.
And
their
he also-
masculine way.
I think it's their way.
Uh-huh.
I think that they are at a place where they're more accepting, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable having like saying gay, you know,
Mhm.
and being like my nephew is gay and like doing all that. But I think, you know, they're on their own journeys and that's good for them. you know.
Yeah, but I'm glad you added, your culture into the book, because honestly, like, my family is from Haiti, and, you know, like, far as like being gay, that's not acceptable, you know what I'm saying? And especially with old school, like, people, like, they're just, like, they're not, their mind is just not open-minded, like, they're very closed-minded. Yes, so I feel like I'm glad you had to add that in, because other people are going through that same thing as well, you know what I'm saying? And it's a struggle for them, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, especially when I was writing about my mom more than even my uncles, as I was writing about her, like I love my mom, like I love her so much. And despite everything that happened, that you read the book, you know,
No, but it just, she loves you.
yeah, exactly, right? And I always do that. And so I had to do this chapter called Cool Mom that comes later on. And in that chapter, I was really like trying to ask myself, like, why, despite all these bad things that happened, do you still love her, right? And while answering that question, I had to ask a lot of questions of like her life. And I had to sort of contextualize it. And that's where I discovered things like, you know, in Nicaragua, it was illegal to be gay until 2008. She didn't know any openly gay people.
Mhm.
When she immigrated to Miami in the 80s, it was in the height of the AIDS epidemic. So when I came out to her, she thought I was basically gonna die. Like that was it.
Yeah.
She didn't know any better. And then I saw, like when I came out, I didn't know anything about being gay. I also didn't have a lot of like role models. So if I struggled with being gay, of course she was gonna struggle with my being gay. And yeah, basically by answering all these questions of her life, it like really helped me sort of shift from like my point of view to her point of view. And that gave me like a lot of compassion for like how hard it must have been for her as well. And that does not excuse anything, but it does, you know, add nuance to it because she wasn't just being like evil for no reason. If she was just being like evil, then I feel like that would be a whole different story, right? And then the whole world would be like much more chaotic for me, where it's just like random people are being evil towards me for no reason. But if I can pinpoint the reason, then I can work on like finding like a solution, right? So yeah.
Yeah, you have to understand like her upbringing too, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's what makes you sympathize with her, because she's not used to that.
It just sucks to be in a position where you have to like extend so much compassion.
Yeah.
And you have to like work really hard to understand why people are harming you. And that's applicable in like so many different situations. And I extend empathy that isn't always extended back, right? It's basically like you gotta be the bigger person. And I'm honestly like I'm petty, and I can't be the bigger person for everyone. I was a bigger person for my mom because that's my mom. And she sacrificed a lot for me. And I knew ultimately that she loved me, so I was willing to do that for her. I'm not always willing to do that for her.
So how do you feel now versus when you wrote this book or when you started writing the book? What's the difference between then and now you're a published author with this book? How do you feel I know you mentioned that you're happy and excited and when others read the book, but during writing the book, what were your emotions like?
Well, I had like every emotion. But I like cried a lot. I like pulled out my hair. I laughed sometimes. I was like, what that happened? I was like re-embarrassed over other things that happened. There was like this one sex scene that is like so bad, and I was like, I cannot believe I'm telling you.
We were here for
I
it.
was here.
I don't know if it's that very much. Well, I won't like tell you everything, but I passed out. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't believe people are gonna read this. But there were like a whole bunch of emotions. Also, when I started writing the book, I still had a lot of that shame and felt a lot of that stigma. I mean, I just talked about how I had written that chapter about going to the gay bathhouse, the sex ball, and how I was still like kind of like I wanted to go and I needed to find an excuse because I wouldn't have like gone on my own. Right? Now like I don't have those hang-ups. Like I would just go and it's like I don't feel like I don't feel ashamed. And again, it's complicated. I think that like the arc is supposed to be from like this place of deep shame that I felt most especially in my uncle's cockfighting ring in Nicaragua. It's a very like masculine, like machista space, and also in bed with a woman, to pride, shame to pride, and feeling proud now. But I think proud and pride is just like a very like complicated virtue. It's kind of like a reductive word. It's like very simple. Sometimes I feel really proud, and then sometimes I still feel scared. Sometimes I still feel like afraid that somebody's gonna like hurt me for being gay. The difference is that I know that it's worth it now. Whereas when I started writing the book, I was, and I hadn't wrapped up all of these like amazing queer memories. I wasn't sure whether it would be worth it. So yeah, I think that is the biggest difference. I think it's worth it. Yeah.
That's one thing I need to read. I love this. I don't even need to hear.
Really?
Yeah, no, for,
This is going on, but this comment, or question. So we talk a lot about, this is like the professor. We talked a lot about intersectionality, heteronormativity, colorism, and notions of who gets to decide what's authentic. And we read the article in USA Today about Latinx, and which teacher do you remember that?
yeah.
And so it has writing high-risk homosexual deepened or challenged your knowledge of these stereotypes?
It's hard sometimes to distinguish like what I learned writing the book and then what I would have learned naturally as just like a human being in the world. Because it took me, like I said, 7 years to write. And I started when I was like 21, and I think that I sold this when I was like 27, 28. Like you just grow a lot as a person naturally. So I'm not completely sure whether it was just the book or whether it was life, but I did learn a lot that I then tried to apply to the book, specifically when it comes to the idea of Latinidad and being Latinx, which is just like that's another like really reductive, like too simple, insufficient word. To say somebody is like Latino or Latina or Latinx is like, and like to actually, for that to mean something, it would be like saying somebody is like Asian, saying somebody is like European. Like this, like Asian, like are they Indian? Are they Japanese? Are they Chinese? Like these are all different cultures. European, are they French? Are they German? Are they from Sweden? Are they from Spain? Like these are all different cultures. Latinidad is like this very like umbrella term. And it's like historically and continually very racist and very oppressive. And so that when I started writing the book, I wasn't super challenging Latinidad, even though there are ways that Latinidad has excluded me as well as a Central American person. Central America doesn't fit into like the dominant stories of what like Latinidad as a queer person. A lot of my queer Latinx idols growing up, Juan Gabriel, Walter Mercado, these are people that like never came out in their lifetime. I mean, even in what's this movie Encanto, we need to talk about Bruno. You know, why can't we talk about Bruno, right? Why is his story not as, you know, important? So yeah, there's a lot of ways that Latinidad excluded me, and you would think I would have been challenging that. But I think that was one of those things where as a human being, I started doing my homework on Latinidad. I started reading on these articles and I was like, oh wait, Latinidad is like this messed up thing. I mean, let's talk about Haiti. It shares an island with DR, but a lot of Latinx people don't consider it Latin America. Why? Because racism, right? And that is despite the fact that Haiti has helped liberate a bunch of Latin American countries, right? And so when I think about Latinidad, I'm sorry, it's just like this really messed up thing, and that's why in my disclaimer at the beginning of the book, I'm like, I'm using Latinx because there are some ways that I have found it useful in my life, especially like as a child, growing up in Orlando, not a lot of Nicaraguan people, but there were Latinx people. There were, you know, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, who spoke Spanish, who were first generation immigrants. And I related to that experience. And we had like that common ground, so that I was like, okay, we like relate on a Latinx level, right? Growing up, going to a gay bar, Latin night, right? This was the night where everybody, you know, Latin, whatever that means, but we can all listen to Spanish music. So there's some ways which I found it useful, but in general, I try to be as specific as possible and say Nicaragua when I mean Nicaragua, Puerto Rico when I mean Puerto Rico. So yeah, that is one thing that has
Raise your specificity, because like people can learn, like why? Anyway, I won't sidetrack the conversation. So wait, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's more so. I just want to say that I really love your voice. I'm so glad you didn't change it at all, like, even though I was saying and it's funny because when I was reading it, I was like, I have to talk to him about that scene where you were in the bathhouse where you were the guy came in and you just made this scene up in your head. I don't have the book.
and wait, is the vending machine there? That's what happened?
No, afterwards, like the guy that came and helped you, like when you were in the locker room and you just came out of the bathhouse and you were just like, oh my gosh, thank you. I loved it, but yeah, I would say for me, it really inspired me a lot, especially because I'm a writer and I really want to continue to write as well. So it really did give me inspiration, and I feel like in general, I feel like even though it was like intended, well, it wasn't really, at first it was intended to be universal, but you kind of brought it down to where you at, where you were being true to yourself. And I feel like that resonated with me. Also, I know that before in the play, you said that you were saving.
Oh no, I could not. They asked me not to. But I sang anyway. But I didn't put that. Oh my God, you said something. Okay, on like the idea of universality. Again, that is just like such a coded word for what the publishing industry thinks white straight people are going to try to read or are going to not. Even though, like I said, there's evidence and so much proof that all kinds of stuff. But yeah, as you enter these like creative writing spaces and workshop spaces, people are going to try to like water your voice down and make it quote unquote more universal. And yeah, you really have to push back on that. And I often think of like growing up, I didn't have necessarily a lot of like queer Latinx representation in, let's say, TV shows, right? What there were TV shows like Friends, and Sex and the City, and I don't know, Everybody Loves Raymond, King of Queens, whatever. And even though these stories had nothing to do with my life, I still found things that I related to. I still found use in these shows, even if it was just that they made me laugh, right? And so people who are considered universal, people of marginalized backgrounds, are often like growing up, a lot of times we have to see ourselves or find value in things that have nothing to do with us, right? That is like a leap that everybody is able to make, except for some reason, like straight white people somehow they don't think that they can. Like, I don't know how many straight white people are buying hair. You know what I mean? Even though I think that they would find something useful in it, even if, like I said, if it's just laughing, they still might not. It's just something interesting. Clearly, like we are, like one of my favorite movies is Pride and Prejudice. It has to do with like some like Victorian ladies trying to get married, right? Or some else trying to get married. And like I see so much of like my journey in their story. It's only like on a base level of like not feeling like I have control of my life, feeling I have to like I have to follow these paths to like please my parents, right? There's so many different things that that help me in this story that have nothing to do with me. And I just wish other people would do that.
I guess the reason to my, sorry. But yes, do you have any more pieces in mind for the future? And what kind of genre, what is it that you're really like longing for to write where you have in the process?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm working on another book, another memoir collection of essays, kind of some similar to this. It's gonna be, I feel like this was my book about queerness. And as I was writing this book, there was a lot about class and about growing up poor that I feel like I didn't super get to explore. That feels still really urgent and like fresh in my mind. So now the second book, I want to talk about class and I want to talk about growing up poor and how the lessons I learned as a queer Latinx child helped me survive as an adult. And I'm trying to push back on this idea that like a lot of times when people experience something bad and they're telling somebody else about it, they'll be like, oh yeah, this really awful thing happened. But you know what? It made me strong. And I'm trying to push back on that and say, you know what, growing up poor didn't make me strong. But it made me hungry. It made me weak. It made me scared. But it also made me creative and inventive and all of these other things. And so yeah, I'm trying to push back on the idea of like
I like it.
strength.
Class. Okay, because I see the book, but you know, based on what you said, you did a really good job at. So, and you know, based on what you just read, have you had people that you mentioned, and from you know, specific people, but I'm sure like people that you probably mentioned in the book, and they're like, hey, are you talking about me? Or like having a comment, like I don't know, your uncles per se, like have they had like a feedback or have you heard back from anybody? Like,
Yeah, so my family, some of them don't know about the book. In general, they don't really read a lot. And if they did read, they would read in Spanish. So my book, I don't think it's like on their radar. And then on top of it, it's taught Irish homosexual. So even if they did read in English and read regularly, I don't know that they'd be like, oh, I want to find out about like my nephew's, gay thing, right? I was really, that was one of the things that I was nervous about, that somebody would be like, oh my God, you wrote about me and I think my colleagues wrote about me. And I was really, really conscious about that up until like the week before the book was published. Like I even was taking out some lines because I was like, this line might be mean, and I still want to be friends with this person. And so you do, I mean, it is something that I will say I was thinking about. Not everybody cares. A lot of people will say, oh, if you did something bad, then if I wrote about you doing something bad and you don't like it, then you shouldn't have done something bad. I don't really think like that. I try to like extend a little bit more compassion, or at least try to show like other people's motivations for why they were acting bad, and give that context like I did with my mom. But yeah, some people have reached out and it's like only been good things so far. One person sent me lotion, which is really nice. It's my bio, and the book says that I'm saving up for lotion. It was really good lotion. It was good.
Oh,
I know.
excuse me.
But I'm kind of mad because now I'm like obsessed with Keel, but it's like $60.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
So,
It's
I
expensive.
have two quick questions. For the aspiring writers here, can you talk about like, how you guys meet and what does that process look like? Second question, how do you know when material is good enough to interest a stranger versus, you know, you want to maintain your voice, but you also want to appeal to interested readers?
First the agent. I love talking about this because it was like kind of, I'm not gonna say it was easy, because I didn't have queried an agent before. I like emailed an agent and asked them to be my agent, and they have said no. And that kind of traumatized me for a while, and I've been talked to any other agents for like 2 years. The way that I found my agent was on Twitter. So if you're a writer, I assume, and I've heard this from like other, either you can like, you know, add agents that publish, by the way, that like represent authors that publish work similar to yours. What do I mean by that? If you are writing sci-fi, don't like add an agent that like only publishes authors that write books about baseball, right? That's not gonna make sense. They're not gonna be like, you're not gonna be on the radar. So like find agents and with like that publish voices similar to yours, try to be in community with them. But the way that I found my agents is twice a year, there are a couple of Twitter events, which sounds so like dramatic. But there are days when one is called PinMad and the other one is called something else. You know, no, the one I did is called PinMad. So on that day, and you can Google PinMad and there's like a website to tell you this. You write it, you have, obviously you get like 140 tweets or 140 characters, and you basically tweet out what your book is. In 140 characters, you hashtag it, hit ad. And that day, agents and editors are.
That's great.
Wait, which day is it? Yeah, because that was right.
He said there's a website, you can go and check it out. That's a great idea.
And
Bit mad.
Came to this class and told us to get on Twitter.
She did.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
feel like,
Oh, I love that.
as do we, and I feel like this is a good exercise.
Okay.
Bit mad.
Well, okay, so that day, you tweet out basically an elevator pitch. What's an elevator pitch? It's basically if you're riding an elevator with somebody who might like be able to buy your book, you have 2 minutes before you get to the floor, and that's how much time you have to pitch them what the book is about, whatever the problem is. So you tweet out your elevator pitch. Mine was like, high risk homosexual, I started with the title. Collection of essays from shame to pride, readers follow my journey, from my uncle's cockfighting ring in Nicaragua to post nightclub in Orlando and the doctor's office where I was diagnosed a high risk homosexual. Hashtag hit that, hashtag I think I did too. And that day, agents and editors look at the hashtag, and if they like the pitch, they will like your tweet, and that means that they want you to email them, to query them, which is a whole other process. Yeah, to email them, and then usually what they'll do is they'll ask for either the full book if you have it, or 50 pages of it. If it's 50 pages, they'll read the first 50 pages, see if they like it, and then ask for the full book, or as much of it as they have. And yeah, that's how I found my agent. A couple of agents had liked my tweets, and I queried them, and yeah, they were interested, and that's how I signed on. With mine, I know it sounds kind of sketchy, it's like on Twitter, but it's legit. Like my agent represents like, I don't know, people, real people. So yeah, I recommend trying. But either doing the PitMat or whatever the other one is, I'm sure if you look up PitMat, it'll tell you what the other one is, the other events, or just in general being community, following a bunch of writers, retweeting writers, like tweeting out their work and like favorite lines, and like gradually you will find that a bunch of agents and editors might follow you. And so one day, when you publish a story and you tweet out your story, an agent might read it and be like, oh my God, I like this person's voice. I'm gonna follow up with them. That's the other way I've seen a lot of people. But don't be like fake about it either. Like, people can tell when you are just like trying to network or like being kind of like, yeah, phony about it. You know? Tweet out people's stories that you really did enjoy. Don't just be up people's, you know, assholes like, oh my God, why? You know, that can come off as fake and will turn off.
Sorry, I know the other way. Well, how was it? I'm so invested in your life. I'm sorry, you know, but how was the relationship with you and your brother?
It's better too. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think where it ended in this story, in this book was it was like kind of still like an ongoing process where I never come out to him. There's really one chapter to talk about, and it's a chapter about the post nightclub shooting in Orlando, and the immediate aftermath and how I felt some type of way that he didn't call me and check up on me and say like, are you okay? How do you feel? But then I had to challenge that and be like, well, I had never come out as gay. We had never even said the word gay. It was kind of like an unspoken agreement that we had. That he knew, I knew that he knew, we just never said it loud. So like obviously he didn't call me and check up on me because that would have been a breach in our unspoken contract. And then I also try to complicate it and talk about how I feel like my brother just like he followed, I think, the more traditional like path that maybe I was supposed to follow. Like he plays sports, he plays like rugby, he I think worked in construction for a minute. That he works in like for the city doing like construction related things, and a lot of my family does construction. Construction workers. I think he followed the more traditional path. And I also came to the realization that like I think this is speculation that he kind of did that as a way to like relieve pressure on my mom, to show it's almost like proof that like she didn't mess up in raising us by one of us coming out as gay and one of us not, right? One of us being really straight. I think he gave me some of like his like femininity of it, like the freedom to express by him following that traditional path. So yeah, by writing that chapter, I think so made me even more grateful about our relationship. And then yeah, he met my boyfriend recently in PR. Yeah.
Oh, brother.
So is that?
But it takes a long time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to like talk about my book that it isn't just like this easy thing. It takes a while.
So it sounds more like he was protecting you and your mother.
It does feel that way because my stepdad was like very critical about how my mom was raising us. I would say things like, "Oh, you need to put them in sports. Oh, this one is coming like really, like feminine, like you can buy super wearing tight pants, this and that." But my brother not doing any of those things, like I said, yeah, it's like it was just me that was acting this way, and my mom didn't do anything wrong.
Okay, I have one more thing.
No, please.
Okay, so I'm so happy that you're in a relationship, right? I'm so happy about that. How long you guys been together?
2 years.
Oh.
Yeah, we met in the
I'm happy though, I'm happy for you. That's it.
She's gonna be looking out for that invite.
My final question is, what is your, in this current moment, your favorite J-Lo movie?
Oh, okay. My favorite J-Lo movie.
J-Lo? Oh,
I mean, okay, I can give it top 2. I
okay.
feel like I have to say Selena.
Of course you do. Yes, delicious.
And this, I mean, I don't know that Selena has any flaws.
It,
Although I
it,
think one thing about Selena is that the dad was a lot worse in real life and they could have gone in more. But I think he was like a producer and he like got into that. But that would have been such a good opportunity to explore my cheese.
yes,
He
yeah.
was worse than that.
I was just thinking, he was worse than that.
I mean, right now he's like making a 3D clone out of her so he can make more money. It's like a whole thing.
Oh, Abraham.
He was bad. And the second movie is Enough.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
that was good. Yeah, that was good.
Lifetime.
I know it's so like.
Yes, delicious.
And I like it because she learns karate in like sometimes.
Doesn't she, in like 5 months, like a month, she learns it. And she's a pro.
So, yeah, and she's really petty in that way.
She is.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and I think it blends like all the things that I love, which like it kind of starts off as a rom-com sort of, where she's like, bro, she's a waitress, and this like rich dude comes in and like kind of rescues her. All the rescues, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, yeah, she's
Yes.
she had enough.
I have to, yeah.
Yeah.
She had enough. Oh my goodness. Can't walk past the coffee table.
And one more question. Or in the, I'm sorry.
Everyone is pretty quiet here.
There's just one question I was going to ask, but I think you answered it, because I was curious about the title of the book.
Oh, the title. Yeah, okay, so the title, Iris Conceptual, comes from a chapter later on where I was diagnosed with Iris Conceptual. And it's like, this it's so dumb, but okay. I went to my college health center when I was in grad school to get on this medication called PrEP, which is a once-a-day pill that you take that reduces your risk of contracting HIV by nearly 100%. So it's like a protective measure. Basically, the least risky thing you could do is go to your doctor and get PrEP. It's like a very safe, smart thing to do. But to get on PrEP, you have to be diagnosed a high-risk homosexual. You basically have to be risky enough for them to be like, all right, you must be, you know, having a ton of risky sex,
Pouring it up.
high-risk sex, or you know, a bunch of different reasons. And so I went to the doctor. At the time, I was like really afraid of. I've had sex before. I wasn't a virgin, but I still was kind of. I had this fear of HIV, because of all of the messages that were basically shoved down my throat as a queer Latinx youth. Basically, a lot of the movies about queerness where, you know, your life is, you're gonna come out, your parents are gonna hate it, then you're gonna go to college, or you're gonna run away, you're gonna have sex, you're gonna get AIDS, and then you're gonna die. That was basically the one message that I heard over and over. And so I had like internalized that message, and so I had a lot of that fear. And so when I went to the doctor's office, I actually ended up lying, and I was like, yeah, I've had sex with like 4 people this month, to try to make myself seem more risky. And yeah, I got diagnosed with high-risk homosexuality.
Wow.
And basically when I saw that on my prescription, I was like, you know how there's like that running, there's like.
It was on the prescription?
Yeah. And you can Google high-risk homosexual,
Oh,
and like, you'll see a bunch of people, like, it's like, almost like a movement. Of people being like, oh my God, I can't believe it, and a lot of people like making fun of it too. But when I saw it on my prescription, I was like, this is so dumb. At first, I was like, kind of like re-traumatized for a bunch of reasons. And then after that, I started laughing, and I was like, oh my God, this is the title. And so, yeah.
Iris
No,
homosexual.
it was funny, the response though, when you read it, he was like, girl, what? I mean, girl,
Well, the thing is, I was like, I said 4 people, but like that, even that isn't that many people. And she had asked me, but my doctor had asked me a bunch of questions like, did you meet these people online? Like that was like a crazy thing. And I was like, no, I met them in person, thinking whatever, that would be safer. And she was like, oh, did you wear a condom every time? And I was like, yes, I wore a condom. So even like these 4 people that, like, it wasn't risky. And then the other thing is that they diagnosed me a high-risk homosexual to get on this medicine, but queer people aren't the only people that contract HIV.
exactly,
Yeah,
Queer people contract HIV
Yeah.
as well, and there's no high-risk heterosexual
exactly.
diagnosis.
there really
Yeah.
isn't.
And so it only perpetuates the idea that queer people are the only people that contract HIV, and that is really harmful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Not just to us, because that perpetuates stigma, but harmful to straight people as well.
Yeah, disservice.
And straight people think, oh, I can have sex.
I can't get it.
Whatever I want, I won't get it.
Mhm.
And the demographic that I think is highest right now on the rise is straight women. Specifically
Straight Black women.
of color.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it just perpetuates all kinds of.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't applied, would you still make the book?
What?
If you didn't lie then, would you still make the book? What would you?
Oh, if I hadn't lied to that doctor.
Other titles.
I think, I don't know, maybe, I think I would have still written that book, because that's just one chapter in the book. Maybe that essay would have looked differently. And I would have tried to tackle that subject in a different way. I think because I was writing a memoir about growing up queer Latinx, and queer Latinx people queer Latinx men are also one of the demographics that is, I think it's like one, my doctor told me this the other day. It's Black Latinx and Afro Latinx men, it's like 1 in 2 will contract HIV in their lifetime. And so I, like, even when I started this, when I knew this was gonna be a book, I knew that that was something that I was gonna have to talk about, HIV. It just so happened that I wrote about it in that. And in the chapter that I read from, there's like a little bit about HIV. When my friend, the drag queen, points at the drag queen, and it's like, oh, all the drag queens here have AIDS. And that is also a running theme in that chapter. But I don't like fully reflect on HIV or queerness until chapter 10.
What age did you go to the clinic? Or what age was that? Like how long ago was that?
I can tell you because I put my prescription. 25. 9:30. I just remembered.
Oh, when reading your book, you talk about like your class, you were in your first relationship, and like a year. So what advice would you give your younger self in that situation? Oh.
Oh my God, I feel like I'm on drag race. Advice that I give younger me. I think I would tell younger me the same thing that I realized while writing, which is that, you know, it is going to be rough sometimes, but you are going to experience so many like cool things, and it's going to be so worth it in the end. So when things get really dark and you're like wondering whether to keep going, do, because you're just in the lows, but there's going to be a lot of highs. I often think about like all the queer friends that I have, right? I think about how like much deeper my relationship is with my mom, because our relationship isn't like a surface level thing. Like we have to earn that relationship. How it made me basically establish boundaries and negotiate. Like, if you want me in your life, then you're gonna have to treat me how I want to be treated, right? I think about how the fact that queer people have historically been rejected by like the church has made me reassess my relationship with spirituality. And now I have like a much like richer, I feel like spiritual life than I would have if I had just like finally thought, oh, I'm always going to have this, right? So many. I also think about the relationships that I don't have to have. Like I don't have to talk. I don't have to be around people that like don't like me. I don't have to be around my uncle. I don't have to be around, you know, if I were closeted, I would probably like all of my trying to like hold up the like image of being straight. I would have to hang out with like a bunch of straight men. And that sucks. I don't want to do that. And so there's so much that I don't have to do because I'm out. And yeah, it ends up, it all ends up. And for me, it was worth it. For a lot of people, it isn't worth it. That's another thing.
Well, thank you. We should wrap up there. Come back sometime.
Yes.
I'm gonna make it last. Yes, please. Here. I mean, well, thank you. Okay, so get pizza. For those on Zoom, thank you for swinging by. Be well. And then.
Is that book for sale up there? The book.
Oh, that was Celine.
Oh, that's Celine's. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
So, put that there. Get your books on, girl.
Slightly. I guess over here.
That wasn't one of the.
I'll bet I'll pizza left.
Yeah, for real.
Alrighty, wonderful.
Honestly, that is like probably.
No, that wasn't.
Good night.
No, it was amazing. It was amazing. That's it? Yeah, it was.
Professor,
I'm a marketing.
ask him. End this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll close that. Oh, do you know? Yeah, that's